The fluorescent lights of Terminus 7's auction hall flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across rows of miserable faces. Trevor Nash stood at the back of the crowd, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn jacket. The fabric was threadbare at the elbows, much like everything else in his life lately. His cargo hauler had been impounded 3 weeks ago. Unpaid docking fees. A cascade of bad luck and worse decisions had led him here, to this grimy corner of the station where desperate people came to watch other desperate people being sold. The auctioneer, a grello with too many arms and a voice like grinding metal, gestured toward the platform. "Next item," he announced, his translator crackling. "Valkyrie female. Prime condition. Trained as a personal companion." Trevor's jaw tightened. He knew what those words meant. Everyone in the room knew. The way some of the buyers leaned forward, the hungry gleam in their eyes, it made his stomach turn. She was shoved onto the platform by a guard who kept his shock stick ready. Her scales were a deep blue-green, dulled by weeks of captivity. Chains connected her wrists to a collar around her neck. But it was her eyes that caught Trevor's attention. Most slaves kept their gaze down, broken by the system. Not her. She stared straight ahead with a defiance that seemed to burn despite the bruises marking her face and arms. "Bidding starts at 500 credits, the auctioneer barked. Hands shot up around the room. Trevor felt sick. He had come here looking for cheap labor, someone to help him work off his debt once he got his ship back. That was the plan. Find a skilled mechanic or navigator, work together until they both earned enough for freedom and a fresh start. It was barely legal, morally gray, but it was survival. But watching her stand there, watching the way the buyers looked at her, something inside Trevor snapped. 600, someone called out. A Threxian merchant with jeweled rings on every finger. 700, another voice joined in. The Valkyrie woman, Lyra, according to the datapad the auctioneer waved, kept her expression blank. But Trevor saw the slight tremor in her hands. She was terrified. Of course she was. She just hit it better than most. 800, the Threxian said, sounding bored now. Trevor's hand moved before his brain caught up. It shot into the air. 847 credits. The room went quiet. Then laughter erupted from several corners. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed as he scanned his datapad for Trevor's financial information. "That is everything you have," the grello said slowly. "Every single credit to your name." "I know," Trevor replied. His voice was steady even though his heart hammered against his ribs. The Threxian merchant turned to look at him, amusement written across his broad features. "You are joking, human. You would spend your last coin on a difficult slave? She has fought her handlers. She will fight you too." 847, Trevor repeated firmly. The auctioneer looked around the room, waiting. The Threxian shook his head and waved dismissively. No one else bid. Why would they? The entertainment value of watching a broke human make a stupid decision was worth more than outbidding him. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, to the fool human for 847 credits. More laughter. Trevor ignored it. He pushed through the crowd toward the payment terminal. His fingers shook slightly as he authorized the transfer. His account balance dropped to 0. Not even enough left for a meal. He had just bought himself starvation for a stranger. The guard brought Lyra down from the platform. Up close, Trevor could see more details. The scales around her eyes were lighter, almost silver. Her hands, though chained, had calluses that spoke of technical work. And the bruises, there were too many to count. "She is yours now," the guard said, shoving the chain toward Trevor. "Good luck, human. You will need it." Trevor took the chain but did not pull it. Instead he looked directly at Lyra. "Can you walk on your own?" Her eyes widened slightly. It was the first question anyone had asked her in months. "Yes," she said carefully. Her voice was rough from disuse. "Then let's go." Trevor turned and started walking toward the exit. The chain hung loose in his hand. He could feel eyes on his back, hear whispers following them. "Where are you taking me?" Lyra asked. Her tone was neutral, carefully controlled. "Registry office," Trevor replied without looking back. "Why?" "You will see." The walk through the station's corridors felt endless. Lyra stayed 2 steps behind him, waiting for whatever fresh nightmare was about to unfold. She had learned not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt worse. The Freedom Registry office was a small room on level 3, staffed by a bored-looking human woman who barely glanced up when they entered. "Help you?" she asked. Trevor approached the counter and dropped the chain on its surface. "I need to file freedom papers. Immediate release." The woman's eyes finally focused. She looked from Trevor to Lyra and back again. "You just bought her. Transaction logged 20 minutes ago. I know. Now I am freeing her. Silence filled the small office. The woman leaned back in her chair, studying Trevor's face. This is not a joke? Do I look like I am joking? The registry officer tapped her screen, pulling up forms. You understand you will not get your credits back. The auction house does not give refunds. I understand. You will receive no compensation. No tax benefit. Nothing. I know. The woman shrugged and pushed a data pad across the counter toward Lyra. I need your signature here. And a retinal scan. Lyra stared at the screen. Her hands, still chained, hovered over the device. I do not understand, she whispered. You are being released, the officer explained. Full freedom. No conditions. No debt attached. Why? Lyra turned to Trevor, her defiance cracking for the first time. What do you want from me? Trevor met her gaze steadily. Nothing. I want nothing from you. You are not property. You never should have been. But you spent everything. I saw your account balance on the screen. You have nothing left. I know. Trevor's expression softened. I could not watch them sell you like cargo. So I did not. That is all. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed her thumb to the pad and leaned forward for the retinal scan. The machine beeped confirmation. The registry officer typed rapidly, then nodded. Done. You are officially a free citizen of the Galactic Coalition. The collar will deactivate now. She reached across and pressed a button. The metal around Lyra's neck clicked and fell open. The wrist chains followed. Lyra stood frozen, her hands moving slowly to her throat where the collar had been. Her eyes filled with tears that she blinked away furiously. Trevor picked up the chains from the counter and dropped them into the recycling chute. You are free, he said simply. They walked out of the registry office together. In the hallway, Lyra stopped. Trevor turned back to face her. I do not know what to say, she admitted. Trevor extended his hand. You do not have to say anything. But if you want, we are both broke and stranded on this station now. Maybe we can figure something out together. As equals. Lyra looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she reached out and shook it. Her grip was firm. Behind them, a group of station workers whispered and pointed. The story was already spreading. The fool human who spent his last coin to free a slave and got nothing in return. But standing there in that corridor, hands clasped in a simple gesture of respect, both Trevor and Lyra felt something neither had experienced in a long time. Hope. Real, fragile, and worth protecting. The station cafe smelled like recycled air and synthetic protein. Trevor and Lyra sat across from each other at a small table bolted to the floor. Between them sat one nutrition bar, split carefully down the middle. It was all they could afford. Trevor had exactly 12 credits left after paying for the cafe's seating fee. Lyra had nothing. You really have no plan at all, Lyra said. It was not a question. Trevor bit into his half of the bar and chewed slowly. I had a plan. It involved still having a ship and credits to fuel it. That plan is dead now. Lyra studied him across the table. She still could not understand why he had freed her. In 3 months of captivity, she had learned that every action had a price. Kindness was just cruelty waiting to reveal itself. Yet here sat this human, cheerfully eating processed food while being completely broke. Either he was the most patient manipulator she had ever met, or he was genuinely just stupid. I was a navigator, she said finally. Before the pirates took my ship. I worked on a science vessel mapping new trade routes through the outer sectors. Trevor's eyes brightened with interest. A real navigator? Not just station trained. I have 7 years of experience. I can plot jumps through unstable space that most computers cannot calculate. She paused. I am also good with ship systems. Engineering. Repairs. That is impressive. Trevor leaned back in his chair. I am a decent pilot. Had my own hauler for 5 years before everything fell apart. Nothing fancy, but I knew every bolt and wire in that ship. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cafe hummed with conversation in a dozen different languages. Station workers grabbed quick meals between shifts. Traders negotiated deals over drinks. There is a ship, Lyra said suddenly. In Impound Bay 7. Trevor raised an eyebrow. How do you know that? The guards talked. They did not think slaves were listening, but I always listened. She leaned forward. There is a hauler there. Been abandoned for 2 years. The owner died and had no family to claim it. Under salvage law, anyone can file a claim if they pay the processing fee and prove they can make it space-worthy within 30 days. How much is the fee? 300 credits. Trevor laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have 12 credits. You have 0. We are 288 credits short. I know. Lyra's scaled fingers drummed on the table. But we have hands. We have skills. This station always needs workers. Trevor looked at her carefully. Why are you proposing this? You are free now. You could contact your people, get passage home. Lyra's expression darkened. My people are dead. All of them. The science team I worked with, the pirates killed them during the raid. I survived because I was useful. Because I could navigate. Her voice was flat, controlled. I have no home to return to. But I do have knowledge, and I refuse to waste it sitting in some charity shelter waiting for handouts. Trevor nodded slowly. All right. 300 credits in how long? The salvage claim has time limits, does it not? We have to file within 5 days of initiating the claim request. I already submitted the preliminary form this morning using a public terminal. You what? Trevor sat up straight. I submitted our names as potential claimants. Both of us. Equal partnership. Lyra met his eyes. You freed me when you had no reason to. You asked for nothing in return. That is worth trust. But I will not be a passenger in my own life again. If we do this, we do it as equals. A smile spread across Trevor's face, the first genuine one Lyra had seen from him. Equal partners. I like that. So we have 5 days to earn 300 credits. Then we better start now. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and determination. Trevor found work at the cargo docks, helping unload freight from incoming ships. The pay was terrible, 15 credits for a 10-hour shift, but it was immediate and required no background checks. His back screamed in protest as he hauled containers alongside the station's regular dock workers. They eyed him with suspicion at first, but grudging respect grew when he did not complain and kept pace with their brutal workflow. Lyra discovered that her engineering skills were in demand. She started small, fixing a broken door panel for a shop owner who paid her 20 credits. Word spread quickly in the station's lower levels. The Valkyrie who could repair almost anything became known among the merchants and workers. She fixed atmospheric regulators, patched leaking pipes and rewired faulty terminals. Each job paid a little more than the last. On the second day they met back at the cafe with their combined earnings. 94 credits total. Still far short of their goal. We need to work faster, Trevor said, rubbing his sore shoulders. Or smarter, Lyra replied. She had been thinking about this all day. The station administrator's office has a posting board. Emergency jobs that need filling immediately. They pay more because they are urgent or unpleasant. They found the board on level 5. Most of the postings were exactly as Lyra described. Unpleasant. Cleaning waste recyclers. Repairing the radiation-damaged section of the outer hull. Sorting contaminated cargo. Trevor pointed to one listing. 70 credits to clean out a flooded storage unit on level 2. Says here the previous tenant left biological samples that leaked. That sounds horrible, Lyra said. It sounds like 70 credits. They took the job. It was worse than horrible. The smell alone made Trevor gag within the first 5 minutes. The storage unit was knee-deep in murky water mixed with chemicals from the leaked containers. Strange fungus grew on the walls. Something moved in the water that neither of them wanted to identify. They worked for 8 hours straight, hauling out ruined containers and scrubbing walls. Lyra's scales proved resistant to the chemicals, which helped. Trevor used a breathing mask he borrowed from a sympathetic janitor. When they finally finished, the station supervisor inspected their work and grudgingly transferred the credits. You two are either very desperate or very stupid, the supervisor muttered. Both, Trevor replied cheerfully. By the end of day 3, they had 297 credits. They were 3 credits short. Trevor sat on the floor of a maintenance corridor, too tired to stand. Lyra leaned against the wall beside him, her scales dulled from exhaustion. We are so close, she said quietly. Trevor checked his chrono. They had 6 hours until the filing deadline. He looked down at his worn boots. They were the last good pair he owned, worth at least 20 credits at a second-hand shop. Wait here, he said, pulling himself to his feet. 30 minutes later, Trevor returned barefoot, holding a credit chip. Got 5 credits for the boots. We now have 302 credits. Enough for the filing fee and maybe one shared meal after. Lyra stared at his bare feet, then at his face. You sold your boots. We needed 3 credits. I had boots worth 5. Simple math. They walked together to the impound bay office. Trevor's feet were cold on the metal floor, but he did not complain. The clerk processed their salvage claim with board efficiency, taking exactly 300 credits and handing them a temporary access pass. Bay 7 Berth 12. You have 30 days to make it space-worthy or the claim reverts to the station. Good luck. You will need it. The walk to Bay 7 felt longer than it should have. They passed rows of impounded ships, some sleek and expensive, others barely holding together. Berth 12 was at the far end, covered in dust and neglect. The ship was worse than either of them expected. It was a mid-sized hauler, maybe 40 years old. Scorch marks blackened one side of the hull. The landing gear looked uneven, possibly damaged. Through the cockpit window they could see a mess of disconnected wiring. Second Chance, Lyra read from the faded nameplate on the hull. That is an appropriate name. Trevor walked around the ship slowly, his trained eye cataloging every problem. The list was long. Very long. The engines might be salvageable. Maybe. The life support is going to need a complete overhaul. And I think something is nesting in the cargo bay. Can we fix it? Lyra asked. Trevor looked at the battered ship, then at Lyra, then back at the ship. Against all logic and common sense he smiled. Yes. We'll take every skill we have and a lot of luck. But yes, we can fix it. They stood together in the dim light of the impound bay, looking at their future. It was damaged, worn, and probably cursed. But it was theirs. Equal shares. Equal effort. Equal hope. Lyra placed her hand on the hull, feeling the cold metal beneath her palm. For the first time since the pirates destroyed her life, she felt something other than emptiness. Purpose. Direction. Partnership. Let us get to work, she said. Trevor nodded, already mentally listing the repairs they would need to tackle first. They climbed aboard the Second Chance together, ready to turn a derelict wreck into something that could fly. Neither of them knew if they would succeed. But standing in that dusty cargo bay, surrounded by broken equipment and impossible odds, both realized they had found something rare in the vastness of space. They had found someone to trust. The Second Chance groaned as it dropped out of hyperspace. Trevor's hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, checking systems that still felt unfamiliar after only 2 weeks of ownership. Beside him in the co-pilot seat, Lyra monitored the navigation display, her scaled fingers dancing over the screen. We are on course, she announced. The mining colony should be visible in 4 hours. Their first legitimate cargo run. Medical supplies for a small mining operation on the edge of the Kepler belt. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover fuel and food for a month, but it was honest work. No questions asked, no shady dealers, just straightforward transport. Trevor leaned back in his seat, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The past 2 weeks had been brutal. Every day spent crawling through the ship's guts, replacing burnt wiring, patching hull breaches, and coaxing the ancient engines back to life. They had worked 18-hour days, surviving on protein paste and determination. The ship still rattled in ways that made Trevor nervous, but it flew. That was enough. Sensors are showing some solar activity ahead, Lyra said, her tone casual. Nothing unusual for this sector. Keep monitoring it. I do not want any surprises on our first run. Lyra nodded, her attention fixed on the display. They had developed an easy working rhythm over the past weeks. Trevor handled the piloting and mechanical repairs. Lyra managed navigation and the ship's computer systems. Where one had weakness, the other had strength. It worked. The hours passed quietly. Trevor dozed in his seat while Lyra kept watch. The ship hummed around them, a sound that was becoming familiar. Almost comforting. Then the alarm screamed to life. Trevor jerked awake, his hands immediately reaching for the controls. What is happening? Lyra's face had gone pale, her scales reflecting the red emergency lights. Solar flare. Massive one. It came out of nowhere, the sensors did not detect it building. The view screen showed a wave of radiation rushing toward them like a golden tsunami. Beautiful and deadly. How long until it hits us? Trevor demanded, already adjusting their course. 90 seconds. Maybe less. Can we outrun it? Not with these engines. Not even close. Lyra's fingers flew across her console. I am rerouting all available power to the shields. It might be enough to protect us from the worst of it. The ship shuddered as Lyra diverted energy from life support, weapons, everything non-essential. The shields powered up, creating a protective bubble around the Second Chance. On the view screen the radiation wave grew closer. 60 seconds. Hold on, Trevor muttered, gripping the controls. The flare hit them like a physical blow. The ship lurched sideways, throwing both of them against their restraints. Every screen in the cockpit flickered and died. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. Status report. Trevor shouted over the screaming alarms. Lyra fought with her dead console, trying to get anything to respond. Shields are down. Life support is failing. The radiation fried half our systems. We are running on emergency power only. Trevor tried to restart the main engines. Nothing. The backup engines fired briefly, then sputtered and died. They were drifting, blind and powerless, through a radiation storm. We need to restore the shields, Lyra said, her voice tight with controlled panic. Without them, we will be dead from radiation exposure in less than an hour. Tell me something I do not know. Trevor pulled up the emergency systems diagram on a backup screen. The display was cracked and flickering but readable. The shield generator is in the port engine bay. According to this, it is showing a physical disconnect. Something came loose during the impact. Can you reach it from inside? Trevor traced the path on the diagram, his heart sinking. No. The access panels are all fused shut from the power surge. The only way to reach it is from outside the ship. They both went silent. Outside meant a spacewalk. Through active radiation. Without proper shielding. I will go, Lyra said immediately. Absolutely not. I am the captain. I should. You are the only one who can pilot us out of here if we get the shields back online. Lyra was already unbuckling her restraints. And my species has better natural radiation resistance than humans. Not much, but enough to maybe make a difference. Trevor wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Every second they debated was a second closer to death. How long will the repair take? If it is just a loose connection? 3 minutes. Maybe 5 if I have to reroute anything. You have 7 minutes of air in the emergency suit. No more. Then I better work fast. Lyra moved to the small airlock at the rear of the cockpit. The emergency suit hung there, designed for quick repairs rather than extended spacewalks. It was thin, offering minimal protection. She climbed into it with practiced efficiency, sealing the helmet and checking the oxygen gauge. 6 minutes, 53 seconds. The gauge was optimistic. Trevor watched her through the airlock window. Lyra. She turned, her eyes visible through the helmet's faceplate. Come back, he said simply. She nodded once, then cycled the airlock. The outer door opened and she stepped into the void. Trevor returned to the pilot's seat, pulling up the external camera feeds. Most were dead, but one grainy image showed Lyra's suit clinging to the hull as she made her way toward the engine bay. The radiation made the image flicker and distort. I am at the access panel, Lyra's voice crackled through the dying radio. Opening it now. Trevor's hands gripped the controls uselessly. He could do nothing but wait and trust. Trust a woman he had known for less than a month. Trust her skills, her judgment, her ability to survive the impossible. I see the problem, Lyra reported. Her voice was strained. The main coupling came loose. I'm reconnecting it now. Trevor watched the power readings. Still nothing. He tried not to think about the radiation levels outside. Tried not to imagine what it was doing to Lyra's body. How much time? Lyra asked. Trevor checked the chronometer. 4 minutes gone. 3 minutes of air left. Understood. The silence stretched. Trevor stared at the power display, willing it to show something. Anything. The ship drifted through space, dead and dark except for the emergency lights. Come on, Trevor whispered. Come on, Lyra. Got it? Lyra's voice burst through the radio. The coupling is secured. Try the shields now. Trevor's hands flew across the controls. He rerouted emergency power to the shield generator and held his breath. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the shields hummed to life. Not at full power, maybe 40%, but it was enough. The radiation readings inside the ship immediately began to drop. Yes. Trevor shouted. Lyra, you did it. Get back inside now. No response. Lyra? Static. Trevor's blood turned cold. He checked the external camera, but the angle was wrong. He could not see the engine bay. Lyra, respond. Please respond. More static. Then a weak voice. I am here. Suit radio is damaged. Coming back now. Trevor watched the airlock status display like his life depended on it. Because hers did. The outer door showed as open. Then closed. Pressurization cycle beginning. It felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. The inner door opened. Lyra stumbled through, yanking her helmet off. She collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Her scales had lost their color, turned almost gray. Radiation sickness was already setting in. Trevor was out of his seat instantly, helping her to the small medical bay. He grabbed the radiation medication from the emergency kit, barely enough for one dose, and injected it into her arm. She flinched but did not cry out. "How bad?" she asked weakly. "Bad enough. But you will live." Trevor helped her onto the medical cot. "You just saved both our lives." "We saved our lives," Lyra corrected. "You got the shields online. I just reconnected a wire." Trevor laughed, a sound edged with hysteria and relief. "You just reconnected a wire. Through a radiation storm. In a failing suit. With 3 minutes of air." Lyra managed a weak smile. "When you say it like that, it sounds impressive." They sat in silence for a moment, the reality of how close they had come to death settling over them. Trevor's hands were shaking. He clasped them together to make it stop. "I need to get us moving," he said finally. "The colony is still expecting us. Can you walk?" "Give me 10 minutes." Trevor returned to the cockpit and restarted the engines. They coughed and complained but eventually caught. The ship limped forward at quarter speed but they were moving. He set a course for the mining colony and engaged the autopilot. By the time he returned to the medical bay, Lyra was sitting up, some color returning to her scales. He sat down beside her on the cot. "I thought I lost you," Trevor admitted quietly. "I thought I would not make it back," Lyra replied. "My suit timer showed 30 seconds of air when I got to the airlock. I was holding my breath for the last part." They looked at each other and suddenly they were both laughing. Not from joy but from the sheer absurdity of being alive. Two people who barely knew each other, who had survived on trust and desperate hope. When the laughter faded, Trevor extended his hand. "Partners? Real partners? Equal shares in everything, profit, danger, decisions?" Lyra gripped his hand firmly. "Equal shares. Equal voices. I trust you with my life, Trevor. I already proved that today. And I trust you with mine." They shook on it, a simple gesture that meant everything. Outside the ship, the radiation storm continued its deadly dance through space. But inside the Second Chance, two people who had been strangers a month ago had forged something stronger than any hull plating. They had forged a bond that could survive the void itself. Later, after delivering their cargo and receiving payment, they shared a meal in the ship's tiny galley. Real food this time, not protein paste. Nothing fancy, just heated rations and recycled water, but it tasted like victory. "To the Second Chance," Trevor said, raising his cup. "To second chances," Lyra echoed, clinking her cup against his. And in the quiet hum of the ship around them, they both knew they had found something rare. Not just a partnership but a purpose. Not just survival but a reason to keep flying into the unknown. Together. 3 months of steady cargo runs had given Trevor and Lyra something they had not experienced in a long time: stability. The Second Chance was no longer a dying wreck held together by hope. The engines purred smoothly. The life support worked without complaint. They had even upgraded the shields after the solar flare incident. Their reputation as reliable haulers was growing in the frontier colonies. Today they were transporting rare minerals through the Vortex sector, a region known for lawlessness but also for paying triple the normal rates. High risk, high reward. They had debated taking the job for 2 days before Lyra convinced Trevor they were ready. "We have good shields now," she had argued. And the payment could cover ship upgrades for the next year. Trevor had agreed, though something in his gut told him to refuse. He should have listened to his gut. The pirate ship appeared on their sensors without warning, dropping out of nowhere like a predator. It was a KRWL destroyer, heavily armed and scarred from countless battles. Trevor's hands moved to the weapons controls, but Lyra grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. Her face had gone completely pale, her scales losing all color. "I know that ship." The communication system crackled to life. A rough voice filled the cockpit, speaking in heavily accented standard. "Human vessel Second Chance. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Trevor looked at Lyra. She was shaking, her eyes fixed on the view screen where the destroyer loomed larger. "Lyra? Talk to me." "That is the ship," she said, her voice barely audible. "The one that attacked my science vessel. The one that killed my team." Trevor's blood turned cold. He opened a channel back to the pirate ship. "This is Captain Trevor Nash of the Second Chance. We are on a legitimate cargo run. We have no quarrel with you." Laughter echoed through the speaker. Then a new voice, deeper and more menacing. "Trevor Nash. How interesting. But we are not here for you, human. We are here for stolen property." A video feed appeared on their screen. A KRWL stood in what looked like a command deck. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, with armor welded directly into his skin. Scars crisscrossed his face. His eyes were cold and calculating. "I am Captain Drexus," the Carwell announced. "And you have something that belongs to me. A Valkyrie female. She was taken from my possession 3 months ago." Trevor felt Lyra's hand tighten on his arm. "I belong to no one," she said loudly, forcing strength into her voice. Drexus's eyes narrowed as he located her on the video feed. "Ah, there you are. Still defiant, I see. That spirit will be broken properly this time. Return to my ship immediately, or I will destroy your pathetic hauler and take you from the wreckage." "She is a free citizen," Trevor said, his voice hard. "Filed and registered. You have no legal claim." "Legal?" Drexus laughed again. "Out here in the Vortex sector I am the law. Now, I will give you 1 minute to comply before I open fire." Trevor's mind raced. They could not outrun a destroyer. Their weapons were minimal, designed to scare off small raiders, not fight military-grade ships. Fighting was suicide. Surrendering meant losing Lyra to a monster who had already killed her friends. Then Lyra leaned close and whispered urgently in his ear. "Carwell have honor codes. Ancient ones. If you challenge him directly, he has to accept or lose face with his crew." "Challenge him to what?" "Single combat. For the rite of passage. It is an old law, but Carwell still follow it." Trevor stared at her. "Have you seen the size of him? He will kill me in 30 seconds. Maybe. But it will buy time." Her eyes were sharp now, focused. "And while you are fighting, I can access their systems. The Carwell use older technology. I can hack it." "That is insane. Do you have a better plan?" Trevor looked at the destroyer on the screen, then at Lyra. 3 months ago, she was a stranger he had freed on impulse. Now she was the person he trusted most in the universe. She thought this could work, he would try. He opened the channel again. "Captain Drexus. I invoke the right of trial by combat under Carwell honor law. I challenge you for the right of free passage through this sector." The Carwell captain's expression shifted from amusement to surprise. "You know of our old ways, human?" "I know enough. Do you accept, or do your crew learn that their captain fears a single human?" Drexus's face darkened with anger. Trevor had gambled correctly. Pride mattered more than logic to a Carwell warrior. "I accept your challenge. We will fight in your cargo bay. You have 10 minutes to prepare. If you try to flee, I will vaporize your ship." The communication cut off. Trevor turned to Lyra. "Now what?" "Now you keep him busy while I break into his ship's network." Lyra was already working, pulling up access codes and security protocols on her screen. "Their shuttles have to link with our airlock. When they do, I can piggyback on their signal and get into their main system." "What are you going to do once you are in?" "Cause chaos. Disable weapons. Maybe life support. Whatever I can reach." She looked up at him. "But Trevor, you need to survive for at least 5 minutes. Can you do that?" Trevor pulled on his jacket and checked his utility knife, the only weapon he owned. "I will do my best." The pirate shuttle attached to their airlock with a heavy clang. Trevor stood in the cargo bay, his heart pounding. The door opened and 4 Carwell warriors entered, followed by Captain Drexus. Each warrior carried weapons that could cut Trevor in half. Drexus himself wielded a massive curved blade that looked like it had seen decades of use. "Where is the Valkyrie?" Drexus demanded. "In the cockpit. Where she will stay." Trevor tried to keep his voice steady. "This is between you and me." Drexus nodded to his warriors, who formed a circle around the cargo bay. This was really happening. Trevor was about to fight a trained Carwell warrior who had probably killed hundreds in combat. "Any last words, human?" Drexus asked, raising his blade. "Yeah. You should have taken better care of your ship's security." Drexus frowned, confused. Then he lunged. Trevor dove sideways, barely avoiding the blade as it sliced through the air where his head had been. He rolled and came up running, putting a cargo container between himself and the Carwell captain. This was not about winning. This was about surviving. Drexus came around the container with terrifying speed. Trevor grabbed a piece of loose pipe from the floor and blocked the next strike. The impact sent vibrations up his arm, nearly making him drop the pipe. The Carwell was impossibly strong. In the cockpit, Lyra's fingers flew across her console. The pirate shuttle's signal had given her access to their network. She was inside their systems now, navigating through security protocols that were old but still dangerous. Her screens showed weapon arrays, life support, engine controls. So many options. She started with the weapons. A few keystrokes and the destroyer's main guns began an emergency shutdown sequence. Alerts would be screaming on their bridge right now. In the cargo bay, Trevor was losing badly. Blood ran from a cut on his shoulder where Drexus's blade had caught him. He was slower now, his movements becoming desperate. Drexus was toying with him, enjoying the hunt. "You fight poorly, human," Drexus taunted. "This is boring." Trevor's response was to throw the pipe at Drexus's face. It was a stupid move, leaving him weaponless, but it bought him 2 seconds. He used them to jump behind another container. Lyra pushed deeper into the pirate ship systems. She found the environmental controls and triggered a cascade failure in the ship's ventilation. Oxygen levels would start dropping across their vessel. Not enough to kill anyone quickly, but enough to cause panic. But she needed more. Something decisive. Then she found it. The shuttle bay doors. Every ship had emergency protocols to prevent the doors from opening while shuttles were docked. But Lyra could override that. She could open the bay doors while Drexus's shuttle was still attached to their ship. The decompression would not kill anyone. Both ships would seal automatically, but it would forcibly separate the vessels. Her hand hovered over the command. If she did this while Trevor was still fighting, the sudden separation might injure him. But if she waited much longer, Drexus would kill him. In the cargo bay, Trevor was cornered. His back pressed against the wall. Drexus advanced slowly, savoring the moment. The blade rose for a killing strike. Trevor looked straight at the security camera and nodded. Lyra executed the command. The shuttle bay doors exploded open. Emergency protocol screamed. The pirate shuttle was forcibly ejected from the Second Chance's airlock, creating a violent separation. Drexus stumbled as the floor lurched beneath him. Trevor used that moment to dive through the cargo bay door, slamming the emergency seal behind him. Drexus roared in fury, but he and his warriors were trapped in the cargo bay while the ship's system sorted out the emergency. Trevor scrambled to the cockpit, bleeding and exhausted. "Go," he shouted. "Get us out of here." Lyra already had the engines at full power. The Second Chance shot forward, leaving the pirate destroyer behind. On their view screen they could see chaos on the KRYL ship. Alerts flashing. Crew members scrambling. Their weapons were offline, their life support was failing, and their captain was stuck in a shuttle trying to dock with his own ship. "They will recover soon," Lyra said, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. "We need to jump to hyperspace before they get their weapons back online." "How long?" 30 seconds. Trevor watched the destroyer on the screen. It was starting to turn, trying to bring damaged weapons to bear. "They are targeting us." 20 seconds. A blast from the destroyer's secondary guns hit their shields. The Second Chance shook, but the shields held. 10 seconds. Another blast. The shields flickered but held again. 5 seconds. The destroyer launched missiles. Trevor could see them on the screen, closing fast. "Now!" Lyra shouted, and she engaged the hyperdrive. The Second Chance stretched and disappeared, jumping to faster-than-light travel. The missiles flew through empty space where they had been. In the safety of hyperspace, Trevor and Lyra sat in silence for a long moment. Then Trevor started laughing. It was the laughter of someone who had just survived the impossible. "That was the stupidest plan I have ever been part of," he said. "It worked," Lyra replied, though she was smiling too. Trevor winced as he touched his injured shoulder. "We need to get out of the vortex sector. Drexus will hunt us if he can." "Agreed." Lyra set a course for civilized space, far from pirate territory. Then she turned to look at Trevor. "You could have run when he boarded. Taken the shuttle and escaped while I distracted them." "The thought never crossed my mind." "Liar." "It must have." Trevor met her eyes. "All right, it crossed my mind for maybe 1 second. Then I remembered who I was fighting for." Lyra's expression softened. "I would have done the same. When I saw him hitting you, I almost abandoned the hacking just to help you fight." "We are a team," Trevor said simply. "That means we protect each other. No matter what." Lyra nodded. "No matter what." They sat together in the quiet hum of hyperspace, two people who had proven they would sacrifice everything to protect each other. Partners in every sense of the word. 6 months had passed since Trevor spent his last coin at that auction on Terminus 7. The Second Chance floated in orbit around Celestia Prime, a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. It was nothing like the grimy stations and asteroid colonies they usually frequented. This was civilized space where legitimate businesses operated and laws actually meant something. Trevor stood in the cockpit watching the planet rotate below. His shoulder had healed, leaving only a thin scar from Drexus's blade. A reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. "The Luminari delegation is ready to meet us," Lyra announced, reading from her console. They are sending a shuttle to bring us to the surface. Trevor turned to look at her. Over the past months, Lyra's scales had regained their vibrant blue-green color. She looked healthy, confident, nothing like the broken slave he had freed. Are you nervous? Terrified, Lyra admitted with a slight smile. This is the biggest opportunity we have ever had. A permanent trade route to a newly discovered species. If we succeed, we will have steady work for years. And if we fail? Then we go back to hauling medical supplies to mining colonies. Which is not terrible but not exactly exciting either. The Luminary shuttle was sleek and elegant, decorated with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living light. Trevor and Lyra boarded it, feeling underdressed in their practical work clothes. The pilot, a Luminary with skin that glowed faintly silver, nodded politely but did not speak during the descent. The meeting took place in a chamber that seemed to be grown rather than built. The walls were organic, pulsing gently with bioluminescent light. 3 Luminary elders sat in a semicircle, their bodies radiating soft colors that shifted with their emotions. The eldest, whose name translated roughly as Morning Star, spoke first. Their voice was musical like wind chimes. We have reviewed your credentials, Captain Nash and Navigator Lyra. Your reputation for reliability and honesty precedes you. Trevor bowed slightly the way Lyra had taught him. We are honored that you would consider us for this position. The trade route we propose would connect our world to the frontier colonies, Morningstar continued. We have resources they need. They have technologies we desire. But we need haulers we can trust. The path through the Nebula of Whispers is dangerous. Many ships have been lost there. Lyra stepped forward. I have studied the nebula. The gravitational anomalies and radiation pockets make navigation difficult, but not impossible. With the right calculations and careful piloting, we can establish a safe route. Another elder, their light pulsing blue with curiosity, leaned forward. You work well together. Your partnership is evident in how you communicate. Tell us, what is the nature of your relationship? Trevor and Lyra exchanged glances. It was a question they had been asked before but never quite knew how to answer. We are business partners, Trevor said carefully. Equal owners of our ship. The blue elder's light shifted to a warmer purple. In our culture, business partnerships of such perfect balance only exist between life-bonded pairs. Those who share not just work but trust, sacrifice and deep care for one another. Is this not true of you? Lyra opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She looked at Trevor, really looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them. Yes, she said quietly. That is true of us. Morningstar's light glowed brighter, a sign of approval. Then we believe you are suited for this task. The contract will be prepared. You will make the first run in 2 weeks, after you have had time to rest and prepare. The meeting concluded with formal bows and expressions of mutual respect. As Trevor and Lyra returned to their ship, both were silent, processing what had just happened. That evening they sat in the ship's small observation deck, looking out at the alien ocean below. The planet's 3 moons created patterns of light on the water, beautiful and hypnotic. Life-bonded pairs, Trevor said finally. That is what they called us. They were not entirely wrong, Lyra replied. She turned to face him. Trevor, I need to tell you something. That day on the auction block when you bought me, I had given up. I was ready to die rather than continue as property. I had planned to attack whoever bought me, force them to kill me. Trevor felt his chest tighten. But you did not. No. Because you looked at me and I saw something I had not seen in months. Respect. Humanity. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You gave me back my life. Not just my freedom but my purpose. My reason to keep existing. I only did what anyone should have done. But you were the only one who did it. Lyra's scaled hand reached out and took his. These past months working with you, building something together, it has meant everything to me. You are not just my business partner, Trevor. You are my friend. My family. The person I trust more than anyone in the universe. Trevor squeezed her hand gently. When Drexus was about to kill me in that cargo bay, my last thought was not about dying. It was about you. About making sure you got away safely. That is when I knew. Knew what? That you had become the most important person in my life. Trevor smiled. I spent my last coin to free you because something inside me knew you were supposed to be in my life. I could not explain it then. I barely can now. But it was the best decision I ever made. Lyra's eyes shimmered with emotion. I would do it all again. The auction, the salvage claim, the solar flare, the pirates. All of it. Because it led to this. To us. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the alien ocean and the dancing moonlight. Two people from different worlds who had found each other in the worst possible circumstances and built something beautiful from it. So what are we? Trevor asked. Business partners? Friends? Something else? Lyra considered the question. We are whatever we choose to be. But I think the Luminari saw something we have been avoiding admitting. We are partners in every way that matters. Business, life, trust, sacrifice. Why put a label on it when the reality is already clear? Equal partners in everything, Trevor agreed. That works for me. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. They studied the Nebula of Whispers, planned their route, and upgraded the second chance with better sensors for navigating the dangerous passage. The Luminari provided them with detailed cargo manifests and introduced them to the colony representatives who would be their regular clients. On the morning of their first official run, Trevor and Lyra performed their pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. The ship hummed around them, reliable and strong. So different from the dying wreck they had claimed 6 months ago. Ready? Lyra asked from her navigation station. Ready, Trevor confirmed from the pilot's seat. The second chance lifted off from Celestia Prime, climbing into the sky with purpose. As they broke atmosphere and entered the blackness of space, both felt the weight of what they had accomplished. 6 months ago, Trevor had nothing but 12 credits and a stranger he had freed on impulse. Lyra had nothing but trauma and lost hope. Now they had a ship, a reputation, a lucrative contract, and most importantly they had each other. Partners who had proven they would face any danger, overcome any obstacle, and sacrifice anything to protect one another. The Nebula of Whispers appeared on their sensors, a swirling mass of color and danger. It would take 3 days to navigate through it safely. 3 days of careful plotting and precise flying. But they had faced worse together. Beginning approach to the nebula, Lyra announced, her fingers dancing across her console. Calculating safe passage. Trevor adjusted their course, following her guidance perfectly. They moved as one unit now, anticipating each other's actions, trusting completely. As they entered the nebula's edge, the ship's sensors filled with interference and strange readings. Most pilots would turn back. But Trevor and Lyra pushed forward, navigating by skill and instinct through the chaos. Hours later they emerged on the other side, intact and on schedule. The frontier colony appeared on their screens, a small station clinging to an asteroid. First run complete, Trevor said with satisfaction. Only about 1,000 more to go. Lyra laughed. And I look forward to every one of them. They docked at the colony and delivered their cargo to grateful colonists who had been waiting months for supplies from civilized space. The payment was transferred immediately, along with glowing reviews of their professionalism. That night, sharing a meal in the ship's galley, Trevor raised his cup. To the second chance. The ship that gave us both a future. To second chances, Lyra echoed, touching her cup to his. And to first partnerships. First partnerships? Well, we are each other's first real partner, are we not? First person we truly trusted completely. Trevor nodded. True. And hopefully the last. I cannot imagine doing this with anyone else. Neither can I. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other in the darkness of space and chose to build something bright together. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled endlessly. Infinite possibilities stretched before them. The second chance's navigation computer beeped, signaling their next scheduled run. Another delivery, another journey through the nebula, another chapter in their growing story. Trevor looked at Lyra across the table. Ready for the next one? She smiled, her scales catching the light. With you? Always. And so they flew onward, equal partners navigating the vast universe together. A human who had spent his last coin on compassion and a Valkyrie who had been freed by that unexpected kindness. They had started with nothing but hope and determination. Now they had everything that mattered. They had purpose. They had respect. They had trust. They had each other. The second chance accelerated toward the next destination, carrying two people who proved that freedom is not just about breaking chains, it is about choosing who stands beside you when you face the infinite unknown. Together they were ready for whatever the universe brought next.